tugged her braid in the middle of the hallway, grinning like it was a game, like no one would stop him. 10 seconds later, he was the one on the floor, gasping and begging her to let go. No one expected it, especially not from her. Not every day starts with a warning. Some mornings slip in soft and quiet. But this one made itself known. Loudly. It was only Jacine Rowe's third morning at Millstone Academy. She hadn't even finished learning which stairwell led to which wing, but already the stairs followed her. The school was massive, far bigger than her last. Polished floors, towering windows, teachers who looked like they walked off a college brochure. The whole place smelled like a mix of fresh wax and overcooked cafeteria hash browns. She moved through the crowd with the silence of someone who'd been ignored before. Backpack tight against her shoulder, head slightly down, weaving past noisy lockers and inside jokes she wasn't a part of. The navy blazer and plaid skirt scratched her arms. She hated uniforms, hated how they turned everyone into copies with no say. Her earbuds were in, but the music wasn't playing. That was intentional. It was her way of building a wall, one that said, "Don't talk to me," without needing to say anything. She'd used the trick more times than she could count. Bloomington, Indiana, felt like another planet. Everything she knew was miles behind her. The people, the rhythm of the streets, even the slang. Here, she was invisible. Just that girl who transferred. But that wouldn't last long. If you looked quickly, Jacine didn't seem like much. Brown skin, long braids, no makeup, no jewelry. She walked like she wanted to disappear, shoulders in, chin tucked, eyes counting tiles on the floor. But if you paid attention, really paid attention, you'd notice the tension beneath. Something pulled tight, like a held breath. Tiffany Moran noticed it first. A junior with thick eyeliner, sharp words, and a habit of pretending she whispered when she actually wanted to be heard. "Who's the girl dressed like she's about to hand out library fines?" she said to her friend, but not quietly enough. Jacine heard. She just didn't respond. No flinch, no look back. Her locker code was already memorized. Her schedule, printed and folded perfectly in her jacket pocket. She was trying to blend in, but not because she was scared, because she'd seen what happened to girls who stood out too fast. She was prepared for a lot, but not for Brent Halbrook. He noticed her near the east stairwell, second period. Tall, white, confident in the worst kind of way. Not confident because he earned it. Confident because no one had ever told him no. His older brother was a senior. His dad donated to the school fundraiser every year. Brent thought the whole world was his stage, and Jacine just another prop. "Yo, new girl," he called out. His voice bounced down the hallway like he owned the echo. She paused, not for him, but to avoid a cluster of freshmen heading the opposite way. Still, Brent took it as an opening. He walked toward her with that crooked smile, the one boys wear when they think they're charming. "You mute or something?" he asked. "I'm Brent. You got a name or you just vibe like that all day?" Jacine looked at him once. "I'm good." Then kept walking. Behind her, he cracked up. "She's good, y'all. Too good for me." His friends chuckled. Not loud, just enough to sting. Jacine didn't speed up. Her face didn't change, but her fists curled, just a little. She kept moving. She had seen this movie before, and she already knew how it ended, unless you rewrote the script. The next day, he was waiting. Same smirk, same corner, same game. He stood by the vending machines between classes, where kids like to hang out, leaning against the walls like they had nowhere else to be. When he saw her coming, he straightened up like he'd been expecting her. "New girl?" he tried again. She didn't answer. "You always this cold or just saving your words for a rainy day?" Laughter behind him. His little audience. She didn't break stride. Her eyes were locked on her locker like it was the only thing that made sense in the world. But Brent wasn't done. He fell into step beside her, walking too close. "You know," he said in a quieter voice, like he was trying to be smooth, "most girls say thank you when I talk to them." Still no answer, but inside her chest, the pressure built. Not fear, not that, just the weight of knowing it was happening again. Different school, same rules, same games. She reached her locker and started to open it. "You on scholarship or something?" he said. "Just wondering, since you wear that same jacket like it's your whole personality." That's when she turned. No raised voice, no drama, just a calm, flat tone. "You done?" Brent grinned like he'd won a prize. Oh, she does talk. He turned and strutted off like he'd just scored points in a game no one else agreed to play. High fives, snickering, fake applause. Jacine turned back to her locker, exhaled, once. But what none of them knew yet? That was the last time he'd touch her braid, and the last time he'd laugh at her like she wouldn't bite back. She reached her locker, but the feeling lingered. Eyes, watching, judging. Not all of them were laughing, though. Some were just waiting. At lunch, Yassine sat alone, far end of the table near the windows, not because she was forced to, but because silence was easier than pretending to belong. She unwrapped her homemade sandwich with deliberate care. A few chips, apple slices, bite, chew, swallow, like clockwork. Then came the footsteps. "Mind if I sit here?" The voice was soft, cautious. A girl around her age with round glasses and a messy ponytail. Jacine didn't answer, just shrugged. "Do what you want." The girl sat down anyway. "I'm Mara Patel," she said, offering a quiet smile. "You're Jacine, right?" Still, Jacine didn't respond. "I just wanted to say," Mara continued, her voice low. "Brent's like that with everybody. He's not really bad, just kind of dumb, you know?" Jacine finally looked at her, dead in the eye. "He's done this to other girls?" Mira hesitated. "Well, not exactly. Just teasing mostly. He talks a lot, doesn't mean anything by it." "So no." Caught. Mira blinked. "I guess no. Then don't tell me he's harmless." The silence between them wasn't tense. It wasn't angry either. It was honest. Jacine didn't look mad. She looked worn out. Mira fidgeted with her sandwich, unsure if she should leave. But then Jacine did something unexpected. She spoke again. "Thanks, though, for saying something." Mira smiled faintly. "Yeah, no problem." But that little moment of peace, it didn't last. The next day, Brent escalated. It happened right after second period, in a narrow stretch of hallway between the science wing and the gym. A quiet spot. No cameras. Barely any teachers. Just enough cover for someone to act out. Jacine turned the corner, and there he was. Leaning against the wall like he thought he was in a fashion ad nobody wanted. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he called out as she passed. She didn't stop. "You always act like you're too good for this school. I bet your house smells like boiled hot dogs." Someone nearby snorted. A few others froze. Still, she kept walking. Then he stepped in front of her. "You got a hearing problem, or you just stuck up?" She glanced up. Just once, then shifted to the side, trying to move past him. He moved with her. "Why don't you smile? Not like you got braces or anything." He was louder now. The hallway wasn't empty, just silent. Kids were watching again, not helping, just watching. And then he reached out and flicked one of her braids. "What is this even made of?" That was the last second things were normal. He laughed like it was all a joke, like they were friends. But they weren't. And Jacine wasn't laughing. She reached up and calmly removed her earbuds, wrapping the cord around her fingers with the kind of stillness that makes people nervous. The hallway buzzed with low whispers. No one said a word directly to her. Brent looked around, grinning for his audience. "Dang, it's a weave. Thought so." He He reached for her braid again. He never made it. Jacine caught his wrist midair, her grip firm, controlled. Not frantic, not wild, just precise. Brent blinked, tried to pull back, couldn't. The grin dropped. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice cracking like glass under pressure. Jacine tilted her head. "You like touching things that don't belong to you?" He glanced behind him. His boys were watching. So were a few other students who'd slowed just enough to witness, but not get involved. "Yo, chill," he muttered, trying to force a laugh. She cut him off. "You think I'm playing with you?" Before he could stutter a reply, she stepped back, pivoted, and swept his leg with mechanical precision. He hit the floor hard, flat on his back. The sound echoed, not just the thud, the shock. His breath caught in his chest, eyes wide like he couldn't process how he went from smirking to staring at the ceiling. Then came the pin. Jacine dropped a knee, not to crush, but to anchor, her hand still on his wrist, twisted just enough to stop him from moving. The hallway held its breath. She leaned in slightly, her voice razor sharp. "I don't like repeating myself. Touch me again, and next time won't end this easy." Brent didn't speak, couldn't. His face flushed, humiliated. One of his friends took a single step forward, but stopped when Jacine looked up. That glance alone froze him. She rose slowly. No drama, no grand exit, just done. Brent scrambled back like the floor burned him, his back hitting the lockers. I wasn't even serious," he stammered. "You trippin'." Jacine slung her backpack over her shoulder like she hadn't just dismantled a boy twice her size in front of half the grade. "Yeah," she said, eyes calm. "I know." And she walked away. Two teachers appeared seconds later. One of them, Mr. Devo, scanned the stunned faces. "What happened here?" he asked. Brent opened his mouth, but no words came out. A girl at the back shook her head and muttered, "He got handled." Jacine didn't turn around. Her earbuds were back in, no music, just silence again. But this time, the silence felt different. She could feel the eyes on her still, but they weren't mocking, not anymore. They were curious, careful, maybe even respectful, but none of that mattered. She didn't do it for them. She did it for herself. Jacine wouldn't forget what happened. Not because of the act itself, she'd handled worse before, but because of what came next. The fallout didn't unfold the way anyone expected. The school day didn't freeze just because someone finally dropped Brent Hallbrook in the middle of the hallway. Bells still rang, worksheets still got passed out, but something had changed in the air. By fourth period, it was everywhere. Not in the way movies show it, not gasps or spotlight moments, but in glances exchanged at water fountains, whispered texts under desks, and curious silence in math class. "You heard what she did?" She dropped him, no yelling, just boom, straight to the floor. Used some jujitsu move or something. Dude looked like a flipped turtle. Even students who hadn't been anywhere near the science wing claimed they saw the whole thing. Each retelling made it more surreal, more mythical. And Jacine? She sat in history like none of it mattered. Elbow on the desk, cheek resting in her hand, eyes half lidded between the chalkboard and a daydream. Waiting, not nervous, just steady, bracing for whatever came next, because it always came. Across campus, Brent was in the nurse's office, claiming his back hurt, but he'd walked in without a limp. His pride, on the other hand, had taken the real damage. During fifth period, the intercom cracked to life. "Jacine Rowe, please report to the front office." The voice belonged to Assistant Principal Franklin, sharp, clipped, official. Jacine didn't flinch. She slid her books into her bag, stood up, and walked out with the same quiet, deliberate steps she always took. No drama, no rush, just forward. The front office smelled like printer ink and unspoken tension. "Ms." Franklin sat behind her desk, arms folded tightly, eyes studying Justine like a puzzle she didn't quite know how to solve. "Have a seat." Justine sat. "I've already spoken with Brent and a few students who witnessed the incident," she began. "Now I want to hear your version. What happened?" The room wasn't silent. Ms. Franklin's pen tapped against her clipboard like a metronome, ticking away the seconds. Justine thought for a beat, then chose her words. "He put his hands on me. I warned him not to. He did it again." "And you felt your only option was to physically restrain him?" "He didn't leave me any other choice." Ms. Franklin tilted her head as if weighing 1,000 invisible equations. "You understand this could have ended very differently. He could have been seriously hurt." "He's lucky he wasn't," Justine replied, calm as ever. The room thickened with silence. Ms. Franklin sighed. Her tone softened, just slightly. "Look, I'm not saying you were wrong to stand your ground, but there are better ways to handle these situations. You could have told a teacher, reported it to a counselor. Would they have believed me before or after he grabbed me?" Justine asked, meeting her gaze without blinking. Ms. Franklin didn't answer. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, exhaling through her nose. "I'm recording this as a formal warning, no suspension. But if there's another incident, no matter who starts it, you won't walk out of here with a warning again." "There won't be," Justine said, and she meant it. As she stepped back into the hallway, she spotted Mira by the lockers, standing near the office window. Mira offered a half wave, equal parts awkward and proud. Justine nodded once, barely. By the end of the day, Brent was gone. Some said his brother picked him up early. Others swore they saw him crying in the boys' bathroom. Justine didn't ask, didn't care, but later, in the locker room before PE, 2 girls she'd never spoken to passed by and gave her a casual thumbs up. "You're kind of a legend now," one muttered. Justine gave the smallest smirk, the first one all week, but even then, the weight didn't lift, because being called a legend for protecting yourself isn't a victory, it's survival. And the real reason she knew how to move the way she did, why she reacted with such calm, was something no one had asked about. Yet. The next morning, the school felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just more aware, more watchful. Justine walked in the same as always, head down, earbuds in, no sound playing. But now, something followed her that hadn't before. Attention. Some students nodded. A few smiled like they wanted to talk. Others whispered the second she passed. Near the stairwell, one kid leaned to another. "Yo, that's her. The girl who flipped Brent like a pancake." She didn't break stride. At her locker, she entered her combo without thinking. Muscle memory. But the voices behind her lingered too long. She turned. It was Mira again, this time with another girl. Tall, lanky, a sketchbook tucked under her arm. "Hey," Mira said, stepping up. "You good?" Justine shrugged. "Fine. I heard Brent might not come back this week." "Not my business." The taller girl chimed in. "I'm Tori. That was wild. Like, do you train or something?" Justine glanced sideways. "Yeah, since I was 10. Mira's eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My uncle runs a school back in Toledo. That's where I lived before here." Tori shook her head. No wonder he didn't stand a chance. But Justine's expression didn't change. Her voice dropped just slightly. "It wasn't about beating him. I just needed him to stop." That made both girls fall silent. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. They didn't walk away. Mira stayed beside her as they moved toward class. It wasn't friendship yet, more like the start of something, a fragile truce between strangers who no longer felt like total strangers. Meanwhile, in the admin office, things were heating up in a different way. Parents had started calling. Some demanded Brent be punished more harshly. Others were outraged their children witnessed violence at school. That afternoon, Ms. Franklin sat in a closed-door meeting with the principal, rereading her inbox full of heated subject lines. She rubbed her temples and sighed. She didn't even hurt him, she muttered. She defended herself. But the story was no longer hers to control. And Yassine? She was just getting started. Principal Gomez let out a long sigh. I get it, he said, his voice lower now. But this school has an image to maintain. We can't afford to send the wrong message. Yassine raised an eyebrow, her tone calm but pointed. And what exactly is the wrong message? That students deserve to not be touched without consent? He didn't answer, just looked out the window, as if the view outside held something safer than the conversation unfolding in front of him. That evening, at home, Yassine sat quietly at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing patterns into the wood grain. Her mom, Trina Rowe, stood by the stove, stirring a pot of rice with the tired precision of someone who worked 12-hour shifts in an OR and didn't have time for sugar-coated versions of the truth. You all right? Trina asked, without looking up. Yassine nodded. Yeah. I heard from the school. Warning, huh? Another nod. Trina clicked off the burner and turned to face her daughter. You want to talk about it? Yassine shrugged. Not much to say. He was messing with me. Pulled my braid, so I put him on the ground. Trina leaned on the counter, arms folded, watching. You sure he's not gonna come back and try something worse? He won't. You sure? Yassine looked her straight in the eyes. He was scared, Mom. Trina didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed just slightly, like maybe she was holding her breath and finally let it out. Yassine added, quieter now. I didn't want to use it, but I wasn't going to let him think it was okay either. Trina stepped over and took the seat across from her. You remember what I always told you, she said. Your body belongs to you. You protect it. You speak up when someone crosses the line. I don't care what some school policy says. Yassine looked down at her plate, her hand tightening slightly around her fork. It just keeps happening. Different cities, different faces. Same thing. People act like I'm a target. Her mom nodded. That's why you keep your chin high. Don't shrink to make other people feel tall, but don't let this world turn you into someone you're not. You protect yourself, but you stay you. That night, long after the house fell quiet, Yassine stared at her bedroom ceiling, her mom's words echoing over the static in her mind. What happened with Brent wasn't just about a hallway. It was about holding on to herself in a world that made it hard to stay whole, especially for girls like her, quiet, observant, built with strong hands and sharper instincts. Girls who didn't fit neatly into boxes labeled sweet or silent. But even with all that behind her, there was one part of her story no one at Millstone knew yet. And it explained everything. Why she came to this school, why she moved, why the strength inside her ran so deep. Most people assumed Yassine came to Bloomington because of her mom's job. That's what the paperwork said. Technically, it wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Millstone Academy wasn't some dream opportunity. It wasn't a step forward. It was a reset. A detour that started after something in Toledo went terribly wrong. Back in Toledo, Yassine had attended a small charter school on the east side. Tighter rules, smaller classrooms. She was quiet there too, but respected. People might not have known her well, but they knew enough not to mess with her. Then it happened, on a school bus, of all places. A junior thought it was funny to tug on one of her braids, just like Brent. Only this guy didn't stop when she told him to. He kept pulling, laughing in her face, mocking her with the word wig girl, while the whole bus watched. Yassine warned him. Twice, he didn't listen. So she did what she'd been trained to do, grabbed him, pinned him against the seat, and held him until the driver intervened. No punches, no blood, just control, just stillness. But the school didn't see it that way. They called it excessive, suspended her for 5 days. Her mom fought it, brought in Jacine's jiu-jitsu coach to explain that restraint wasn't violence. But it didn't matter. When Jacine returned, the air had changed. Teachers stopped smiling at her. Students kept their distance. People who once greeted her like part of the fabric now treated her like a thread that had come undone. It was clear. Quiet was acceptable. Strong was not. That's when her mom started looking for other schools. Millstone had nice brochures, a clean campus, new faces. But schools always look good on paper. It's the people who make the difference. Jacine hadn't come to Millstone looking for trouble. She came looking for peace. But peace doesn't always come when you ask politely. After the Brent incident, she could feel the shift. People approached her more carefully now, with a new kind of energy, respectful but distant. Like they weren't sure what she was capable of and didn't want to find out. No one asked how she was doing, except Mira. Their conversations in the lunchroom grew longer. They talked between classes, not deep talks, just real ones. Enough to start building something steady. Mira was sharp, always doodling in her notebooks, sketching things in the margins like her thoughts couldn't sit still. One day, she handed Jacine a quick drawing she'd done. Jacine on the bleachers, hoodie up, earbuds in. No big announcement, just passed it to her like it wasn't a thing. But it was the first time in a long time Jacine felt seen. One Friday after school, they walked to a corner store a few blocks away. Mira bought chips. Jacine grabbed an orange Gatorade. On the way back, Mira asked the one question no one else had the courage to ask. "Why'd you move here?" Jacine took a sip, then answered without blinking. "Some kid put his hands on me. I made him stop. The school said I was too aggressive." Mira kicked at a stone on the sidewalk. People hate when girls don't react the way they expect. "Especially girls like me," Jacine said. Mira nodded. "Yeah, I get that." They didn't need to say more. That short walk home was the first time Jacine didn't feel like she had to apologize for being quiet or for being powerful. That weekend, she unrolled her old mat in the garage and slipped into her faded sparring gi. Not to train, not to prepare, just to breathe. But peace, she was learning, doesn't come without attention, and attention always brings something else, because the more space Jacine claimed, the more someone started to see her not as impressive, but as a threat. And Monday? It started just like any other. Same hallway, same students. But nothing about what came next would feel familiar. The uniforms were the same. The halls still buzzed with locker doors and half-hearted morning greetings. But Jacine felt it, a subtle shift in the air. Brent Halbrook was back. He showed up before the first bell, posted up near his usual hangout spot by the lockers like he was trying to reassert control over familiar territory. But something about him had changed. The swagger? Gone. The cocky grin? Cracked. And when Haseen passed by on her way to homeroom, he looked, but didn't speak. Word traveled fast, as it always does in high school. He wasn't just back. He'd been told to apologize, not by the school, by his dad. That said something. The whole day moved slower than usual, like everyone was waiting for another scene, another showdown, another moment to gawk at. But Jacine wasn't interested in putting on a performance. She already had her week mapped out in her head. A math test on Wednesday, gym drills Thursday, a quiet Friday with her sketchbook and earbuds. But Brent, he wasn't finished. He found her late in the day, just before dismissal. She was sitting alone on the courtyard bench, notebook open on her lap, headphones resting around her neck, no music playing, just silence and breath. He stood there for a few seconds, unsure, like a kid about to touch a hot stove again. Then finally, he spoke. "Hey." She looked up, just once. No smile, no expression. He scratched the back of his neck. I wanted to say sorry. About the other day. About Everything. She blinked slowly. You're not sorry. You're embarrassed. He looked down, said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. I get it, Yassine continued, her voice calm but deliberate. You're used to being the loudest person in the hallway. You target people you think won't push back, but you picked the wrong girl this time. Brent looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him. Yeah, he muttered. I figured that out. Yassine closed her notebook, stood up, and met his eyes. Look, don't talk to me like we're friends. I'm not mad. I'm not here for revenge, but don't ever touch me again. And don't touch anyone else who doesn't want to be touched. You get me? He nodded. Yeah, I got you. And then, just like before, she walked past him. Only this time, he didn't follow. She didn't walk away like someone who had just won a fight. She walked away like someone who had reclaimed her space. Someone who no longer felt small. Later that week, Ms. Franklin called her into the office again, but it wasn't for punishment. I heard about the apology, she said, folding her hands on the desk. That took maturity, from both of you. Yassine raised an eyebrow. I didn't do it to be mature. I did it because people need to learn what boundaries are. Ms. Franklin gave a slow nod. Well, you made an impact. Yassine stood. Let's hope he remembers it. Back in the halls, people treated her differently. Not out of fear, out of respect. She wasn't just the girl who flipped Brent anymore. She was Yassine, the one who didn't shrink when it got hard, the one who didn't let silence erase her. One day, a freshman bumped into her in the hallway and gasped, clearly expecting a scolding. But Yassine just smiled, gentle and kind. It's all right, she said. Moments like that reminded her that strength wasn't about yelling. It wasn't about being loud or physically dominant. Real strength was knowing exactly who you were and refusing to let anyone take that from you. The following week in gym, the coach started a self-defense unit. When he asked Yassine to demonstrate a hold, she said yes, not to show off, but to teach, to offer someone else the power she once wished she had the first time someone crossed a line. After class, Mira caught up with her. You're like Loki or something, she said. A hero now. Yassine shook her head. I'm not a hero. I'm just done being quiet while people treat me like I'm invisible. Mira grinned. Well, you're definitely not invisible anymore. Yassine looked out at the schoolyard, at the laughter, the scattered clusters of students, the layered chaos of adolescence, and she felt something she hadn't felt since arriving at Millstone. She exhaled, and it didn't feel heavy. For the first time, this place didn't feel temporary, because sometimes respect isn't given. Sometimes you build it, with your silence, with your stance, with your voice when it finally breaks through the noise. So if you ever feel like the world keeps trying to shrink you, push you into a corner, tell you you don't matter, don't let it define you. Speak up, stand strong, and if no one stands with you yet, be your own backup until the day someone sees the light in you, because you're worth being heard.